16.8 million to support equitable outcomes and inclusion in Vietnam, 7.9 million to teach Sri Lankan journalists to avoid, quote, binary gender language, 6.3 million to study men having sex with other men in South Africa.
I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjakovic. And we are unapologetically outspoken. Hey everybody, happy Friday. Stephanie, I swear, just when I think the news cannot get any better, there is another shocking or stunning announcement that's made by someone in the Trump administration. And today is going to be no exception. So Pam Bondi, she got confirmed and sworn in as the Attorney General on Wednesday, which was awesome, right? And the first thing that she did a few hours later was she ordered the DOJ to pause all funding to sanctuary cities that are unlawfully interfering with federal law enforcement operations by protecting illegal migrants. And I got to read her official statement because I loved it. It said, quote, the DOJ will ensure that consistent with law, sanctuary jurisdictions do not receive access to federal funds from the department. Consistent with applicable statutes, regulations, court orders, and terms, the DOJ shall pause the distribution of all funds until a review has been completed, terminate any agreements that are in violation of law or are a source of waste, fraud, or abuse, and initiate clawback or recoupment procedures where appropriate.
Okay, I love how everyone in the Trump administration gets immediately to work and gets more accomplished in their first day than Biden and Kamala did in their entire 4 years.
Right?
It's just, and I love her and I'm loving Caroline Leavitt. What amazing women role models, for my daughters. I can't get enough of them. They're amazing. And the thing with sanctuary cities, I've never understood it because they're breaking the law. People are here illegally. So how are you going to hide them? And how is that legal? And why are they receiving funding on top of it? None of that has ever made sense to me. So it's about damn time someone does something about it.
Yeah, they should not be receiving any federal funding when they're specifically saying they're going to go against federal law.
Right.
It
And that's
makes
what
no sense.
Homan was saying. He's like, okay, for these mayors that don't want to work with me and want to hide people who are here illegally, you're breaking the law. I'll put you in jail too. And that should be how it works. I don't get it. If
Yeah,
I was hiding a criminal in my home, I would be in trouble, right? I mean, you were a cop. You would
yeah,
probably arrest me too, right?
especially if you said, I know it's against the law, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what world are we living in? But I mean, the Trump administration is turning it right side up again. So,
Yes, and that's one thing I love that the world we are living in, the Trump administration is making waves, and especially with DOGE. And we have so much more corruption to get to in terms of the money trail. But I don't know if you saw this, so I want to ask you about it. Did you see that one of the new DOGE staffers, this guy, Marco Elez, I guess he was 25. And he just resigned yesterday because the Wall Street Journal did a deep dive into his deleted X account, and it showed that he had posted a bunch of racist and eugenicist comments. So he
I did
said,
not see this at
"Oh yeah,
all.
yeah." Listen to what was on his account. Comments like, "Quote: You could not pay me to marry outside of my ethnicity. Normalize Indian hate." I would not mind at all if Gaza and Israel were both wiped off the face of the earth. And just for the record, I was racist before it was cool, end quote. So, of course, this is pretty scandalous, right? And you have Elon and the Trump admin being blamed for giving an allegedly self-described racist and eugenicist who was not properly vetted access to the US Treasury financial database.
Yes. Wow. I have seen this not with him, but there are very popular podcasters who, when they were young, teenagers or whatever, posted shit like that on social media. And now they're all successful and it's like ruining their entire life because people are
Yeah.
going way back years ago and finding this stuff. So it's like, yeah, don't be an idiot and post that.
And it's like, okay, people are going to post stupid shit. I mean, thank God the internet was not around or social media was really not around when I was young
Hmm.
because I didn't said a lot of stupid shit, right? But
Yeah.
this goes to show that like nothing you put online, nothing you put in a text, like nothing tech related ever truly gets deleted. And it's clear this guy had some racist beliefs, or maybe these were jokes, who knows? But despite this scandal, which, it is bad, I do think that DOGE is doing some great work in exposing the corrupt government spending. Um,
You know what
so,
else? I just heard yesterday how we were talking about how his team is all super young. He also, on his team, are two autistic people. And I thought, well, no one's talking about that. I think that's
right.
phenomenal. Great, good for him. And, that's of course not what the media is going to focus on, but I think it's great.
Yeah, I do too. So I hope they continue doing good work because I have some more shit to talk about that they've uncovered over the last couple days. But before we get to that, this whole thing with USAID. So there's a whistleblower named Mark Moyer. He's the former director of the USAID, and he has done multiple interviews in the last couple days. And I want to play a couple clips. And this first one is an interview that he did with Jesse Waters on Fox yesterday.
Yes, and great to be with you, Jesse. So I didn't get into the agency till February 2018, and this is one of the big differences that we're already seeing that in 2017. Trump administration was very slow to get into the agency. So I get there in February, and we have what's called a privilege walk as part of the orientation, where you are given an identity. Now, I was a Scandinavian woman, and so when they read lines like, I get discriminated against because of government services, or people don't look how I look. So you took a step forward if it applied, and if it didn't. And so I ended up near the front, and the indigenous woman with unwanted pregnancy and the male prostitute were at the other end, and then we talked about our privileges.
All right, so you were trained to be a Scandinavian woman in a privilege walk, not root out corruption. What kind of disguises do they use to fund these projects? I mean, do they just change the names of these things? Is there really some other reason we're doing this?
Yeah, they're very effective at rebranding things. So in the first Trump administration, the priorities were support national interests, as they are now. Another thing was countering terrorism and promoting self-reliance. So I went to a country, to give one example, they had a feminist women's book club that had been started under the Obama administration. And then they now said this is a counter-terror program because feminist women are key fighters in the battle against terrorism.
Oh, yes, yes. What happened when you raised concerns that this thing was just a big corrupt money pit?
Yeah, so I reported one of my subordinates for criminal conflict of interest. And then the first discouraging sign was I was told, well, that's nice you want to do that. Most people here don't want to report corruption. Now, they didn't tell me why. I later figured out it's because you get in a lot of trouble. So I was accused of publishing classified information in something I'd written 2 years earlier, which had never been subjected to any prior question. And so they ultimately used that to fire me. Now, the people who were engaged in the corruption managed to hold on to their jobs. And so there's a culture of corruption that says, if you are going to criticize anything corrupt, we're going to come after you. And we're going to use the tools that are supposed to be used to go after criminals to come after you. So they ended up firing me based on this bogus accusation. And I've been in court for the last 3 years trying to get them to turn over the facts. And this is of course, what we've seen with a lot of cases with Senator Ernst, for example, they refuse to turn over information to the courts or to members of Congress. And so this is why people are fed up.
So they stonewall and then they weaponize classified information to take you down. That sounds quite familiar. How do you think DOGE is doing so far uncovering this fraud inside USAID?
Well, from what I've seen so far, they seem to be doing a good job. I do think you're going to need forensic accountants to go in there. It's probably going to take a long time because these bureaucrats have devised very crafty ways to hide money. So I was there in 2019, more than 2 years after the Trump administration came in the first time. We were still finding programs that the political appointees didn't know about. Now, you'd think you'd go in and say, okay, guys, tell us where the money is. But somehow, that they will come up with some excuse why they didn't give it to you. And that's partly why I think you're seeing this more heavy-handed approach, because the people there were so good the first Trump term at hiding things from us and mislabeling them and slow rolling them. And, you also, I think the first term, some of the Trump appointees were frankly not as vigilant as they should have been. It seems like now there's a much stronger effort and more concerted effort to go in and get all of the information.
Okay. Is that not like shocking?
This is what's so crazy. It's shocking, but at the same time, it's not, because it's like nothing surprises me anymore with the Biden administration. But what he's saying about them hiding the money, I came across this woman on TikTok yesterday, and she said she used to work in cybersecurity. And so, how I think it was the last episode, we were talking about how much they spent in sushi. She was like, it's not sushi. Sushi is like an acronym for something else that they're really spending the money on. And they're just trying to be sneaky. So they use like sushi, but sushi stands for something. And it's like they're basically talking in code like we do on TikTok, but in order to hide their money laundering.
Yeah, the taxpayers' money. Yeah.
Yes.
And I have one more clip I want to play. I hope it's not kind of repetitive, but there's some stuff he said in a separate interview that I also think is important. If I can get it to play.
Reforms. One of them was that people were subverting the president's will, refusing to, I should say, some of the career bureaucrats were refusing to implement the president's agenda. And they had the opinion that they knew better than the American people who elected the president. And so they figured they would do what they thought was right and not what the president thought was right. And a lot of them were beholden or had ties to the previous administration, the Obama administration. The large majority of them had voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Now, some of them did as they were told, but there was a large resistance element. And in one case, I was at a meeting and they talked about how there was this aid going into Syria and we need to hide it from the White House because we don't want President Trump finding out about it and canceling it. They apparently just forgot I was in the room. That was one example. There was a lot of money being spent without the knowledge of political appointees. And I cite a case in the book where this is 2019, so more than halfway through the administration, we discover this big slush fund that none of the political appointees knew about. And so in that case, we're able to get action once we highlighted it. But this is a problem across the agency. There's also all sorts of conflicts of interest where you have people in the agency with financial interests outside the agency, and they're using the agency to support private businesses in which they have a stake, which is totally illegal. And what got me into real trouble was that one of my employees as an office director was working in his job to do things to help a particular company. And he was actually the chairman of the board of that company. So I reported that up, and apparently other people reported before and no one did anything. What happened is that they helped him find employment at another federal agency, Department of Defense. So he ends up okay. because there has been this stink raised. Meanwhile, they come after me and try to accuse me of publishing classified information.
Okay, I won't play the whole clip, but he basically said that they were trying to totally subvert Trump the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking about because as I was looking at a lot of these expenses, there were a lot of them that were taking place during the Trump administration too. But that's why. And like he said, they're very good. Well, I wouldn't say good because they're getting caught now, but they were hiding it. I mean, they had a lot of layers to dig through. So
Yeah. And I want to bring up some of the insane DEI spending that came up this week. And this is not the same stuff that we reported on Monday. This is stuff that came up yesterday. Another $75 million worth of USAID DEI spending. And I saw this in the Washington Times. So 16.8 million to support equitable outcomes and inclusion in Vietnam, and then another 2 million to promote that inclusion. 7.9 million to teach Sri Lankan journalists to avoid, quote, binary gender language. 6.3 million to study men having sex with other men in South Africa. 6 million to advance LGBTQ principles in, quote, priority countries around the world. 5.5 million to promote LGBTQ causes in Uganda. 3.9 million to promote LGBTQ causes in the Western Balkans, and 2 million for sex changes and LGBTQ, quote, activism in Guatemala.
we need a tally board for how many expenses are sex related because I
Right.
swear it's like all these people had fetishes or something. There's so many weird expenditures around sex. It's like, why are you studying gay men having sex in South Africa? Why? Like
Right. Yeah.
what is how is that helping America?
For sex changes in Guatemala.
It's crazy. And like you said, this is just one day of findings. And that's not even everything, you know? It's like they are uncovering so much. It's like, will we ever get to the bottom of it? I mean, we'll probably be talking about this all year. And I mean, they're literally sleeping on cots. We were talking about that the other day. Like he's hiring young people because they're there 24/7, but they literally put cots in the building. Like they are just focused on this. And one of the big ones that stood out to me was over $68 million that USAID sent to the World Economic Forum. And I think this was spread over a number of years and it was under certain grants. But I'm just like the World Economic Forum that wants to depopulate the earth, like our government was sending them money. And so here's the thing, too, with regards to what that guy said. Elon Musk retweeted a post that was explaining about all of these layers because basically what USAID would try to do to be sneaky was like send a big bulk payment to a shell organization. Like that, you know, it's just some plain organization. And then that organization would then turn around and send a ton of payments to a whole bunch of NGOs. So that's how they were getting away with it for that long. But the fact that they were doing all of that and you have to go through all these layers and Elon Musk and the DOGE team are able to come up with this much this fast is pretty remarkable. You
Yeah.
know? Like they're
Yeah.
they're really going deep.
Yeah. And it is not just all this insane DEI spending, because the spending that they're doing related to media propaganda, the shit that's being revealed with that is equally insane. So, Stephanie, on Wednesday, you played that clip from Ron Paul where he was talking about 90% of Ukrainian press outlets being funded by the US government. Basically, they're controlling our propaganda. Well, guess what just came to light yesterday? Apparently, our government spent 8.2 million in taxpayer dollars here at home by subsidizing subscriptions to Politico. Pretty left leaning news outlet, right? Or what Trump calls the fake news media. So, what did Politico have to say about this? They said that these millions of dollars were for subscriptions only and not for any kind of subsidy or quid pro quo payments. And they weren't trying to push a certain narrative. And I'm going to say, yeah, not believing that one. So the CEO and the editor in chief, they put out a statement yesterday and they said Politico, quote, has never been a beneficiary of government programs or subsidies, not 1 cent ever in 18 years, end quote. And they were saying the payments were for something called Politico Pro, which the Washington Times described as like their in-depth business segment that covers policy and things that might be useful to government workers. Stephanie, do you want to take a guess on what a base subscription to Politico Pro costs?
It was over like 10 grand, right?
Yeah, between $12 and $15,000 for a fucking journalism subscription.
Yeah, that is fake. That is a fake product. No
Yeah.
journalism subscription costs over $10,000.
Right? Yeah. And then later in the day, even more bombshell news came out yesterday about Politico. And I first saw this in an article in The Blaze. And then I actually listened to Liz Wheeler's podcast. And she revealed that Politico actually received a total of $34.3 million since 2015. And I want to play this clip of what she said.
Is the nexus of the censorship industrial complex, and any money that USAID is spending domestically is being spent in the interest of manipulating your political views. This was the report that we woke up to, and could there be a more bombshell report? Well, the answer to that is yes. The team at the Liz Wheeler Show has uncovered that Politico has not only received $8 million, in fact, they have received $34.3 million over the course of the past 10 years, from 2015 until 2025. Conceptualize that amount of money, $34.3 million that federal government agencies have given to a media organization that claims to be objective. No such objectivity can exist when a media organization is being subsidized to the tune of $34.3 million. This, by the way, comes on the heels of an email that was sent from the executives of Politico to all of their staff yesterday. This email that was sent addressed the fact that Politico employees had not received their paychecks yesterday morning, the paychecks that they expected to receive, the paychecks that had never been missed in the history of Politico's existence as an organization. And so the executives sent this email explaining why payroll was missed to their employees. This is what they said. They said, "Dear team, Goalie and I want to address this morning's payroll issue directly. Due to what we believe to be a technical error, employees did not receive their paychecks as scheduled. We understand the urgency of this matter and sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. Our team is working diligently with our systems vendors and the bank to identify the root cause and implement a solution as quickly as possible. We will keep you updated as we learn more and work to resolve this problem as quickly as possible. Thank you for your patience and understanding. If you have any immediate concerns, please feel free to reach out directly." In other words, Politico's leadership is not only gaslighting you, the American taxpayer, they're gaslighting their own employees. They lost their funding suddenly because Elon is doging USAID, and they're unable to pay their employees. So let me.
Okay, so then she goes into detail about how she found all this information on usaspending.gov. Like it's all there. And it's not just money from USAID that Politico received. They got money from the DHHS, the DOE, the DOA, the FDA, the EPA, the CDC. Stephanie, why would any of these agencies be giving money to Politico?
Exactly. That's the question, because it was a payoff. It was a bribery scheme so that they could push their propaganda. And what's really interesting is hundreds of government subscriptions, those $15,000 subscriptions started in 2021. What else was in 2021? Oh, yeah, Biden getting into office and putting in place all the crazy policies and mandates around COVID, and the media just going along with it, saying, the vaccines are 100% safe and everyone has to wear a mask and never questioning anything, right? And we know this isn't the only news outlet being paid off. I mean, if the government was funding the media in countries like Ukraine, then obviously they're funding every single mainstream outlet here. And like
Right.
even BBC Media Action, their funding from the US government accounted for 8% of their total income, which I think is hilarious because as I was, scouring the internet for information for this episode, the BBC was posting how all of this stuff, they're fact checking it and it's not correct. And it's like, of course, they're all going to say this is misinformation because they're all caught and they're going to cover their asses. So, for everyone listening, if you go on and you see these big outlets like ABC, New York Times, Politico, of course, they're going to say this is all bullshit because their neck is on the line. So, like, don't even look at that stuff because, as you said, Tara, you can go on that website, USA, what is it? usaspending.gov,
usaspending.gov. Yeah.
which so many people on TikTok are going on there and screenshotting. That's where I found the World Economic Forum stuff. But then last night, it wouldn't let me in. So I don't know if it's just because so many people are trying to log in at once or if the deep state is like hacking into it. I don't know, but it wouldn't work for me last night. Um, what were you going to
I
say?
was just gonna say what is so disturbing is this stuff has clearly been accessible all along, right? This spending has all been there,
Yeah.
but why would anybody look into it? Because who thinks our government is doing this kind of shit?
Oh, yeah. It's so crazy. And you would think if they are doing it, it's not going to be published on a website. No,
Right.
it's there. It's there. So then WikiLeaks found that USAID funded over 6,200 journalists across 707 media outlets and 279 media NGOs. So they're paying off everyone. And all I
Yeah.
could think about when I heard that was, how pissed Mark Zuckerberg must be because here, like, the news outlets were at least getting money to push
Right.
propaganda. But here, Mark Zuckerberg was just like being bullied into doing it on Facebook and Instagram. Like, he must feel really stupid.
That we know of. I mean, maybe he did get
Yeah.
paid.
But think about it. Like, these were all the people that were saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was disinformation. COVID vaccines were 100% safe, no side effects whatsoever. COVID didn't come from a lab, it came from a bat in a market or something like that. Joe Biden
If
was
you
mentally competent.
Yeah, if you get the vaccine, you won't get COVID.
Yeah. And you won't spread it to other people. Like,
Right.
pushing lie after lie after lie. And we were so frustrated. We're like, how are they just not even questioning it? Well, because they were being paid not to question it. And so just imagine like how dumb everyone must feel that actually believed all that garbage.
Mhm.
It's like they were duped. They were duped. It's all fake. Fake news. Trump has said it all along. This was paid government propaganda, and they've been caught red-handed.
Yeah, that article that I referenced earlier in the Washington Times, they said that USAID gave 2.1 million to the BBC to strengthen the media ecosystem in Libya. And they gave 1.3 million to Arab and Jewish photographers and 1.5 million to rebuild the Cuban media ecosystem. Stephanie, I don't know what the fuck a media ecosystem is, but I'm going to assume it's a fancy phrase for government propaganda.
Exactly. Exactly. That's like when Hillary Clinton was freaking out on live air saying like, well, we can't let, social media and TikTok and X just do whatever they want. We'll lose control. It's like you just said
Right.
that out loud on air, dipshit. Okay, I have something so funny. I'm gonna save it till the end though, so we can end on a funny note, but just having to do with all these payments, it's hilarious. You'll love it. But I had to look at what Trump posted because of course he's got a, great social media post about it. So he says, looks like and this is all capitalized, looks like billions of dollars have been stolen at USAID and other agencies, much of it going to the fake news media as a payoff for creating good stories about the Democrats. The left wing rag, known as Politico, seems to have received $8 million. Did the New York Times receive money? Who else did? And there's like a million question marks after this. This could be the biggest scandal of them all, perhaps the biggest in history. The Democrats can't hide from this one, too. Too big, too dirty. He has got to be just jumping for joy because he's been calling it the fake news for years, and everyone said he was didn't know what he was talking about, and now he's got the proof. I
Do you
love
know
it.
what I love about his posts? Like, I know we've mentioned this before, but you look at most posts that are put out by political leaders and they're calculated and very articulate and well spoken because they're not fucking writing them themselves, someone else is. But you know this is Trump. You know that no one is writing these posts for him. These are coming directly from him with the randomly capitalized letters and then the parts in all caps and all the exclamation marks. And I just love reading his shit because it's entertaining
I
and
know.
true.
I was laughing because I was picturing him and Caroline Levitt, like in her, like, doing the posts for him and him saying, like, Caroline, capitalize all of them. And she's like, oh, fuck yeah, I'm putting three question marks, not just one. Because she's like so aggressive too. And it's so funny. There's this funny TikTok. I'll find a clip and play it on the next episode where they're like making fun of her, but it's in like a friendly manner. You know what I mean? But just how she is like so aggressive and she just goes after these reporters and I love it. I love it. I didn't think anyone would beat what was her name? Kaylee McEnany.
Oh, McEnany.
She's
Yeah.
great. I Caroline is I think even better. I really like the
Yeah.
girl. So anyhow, um, he questioned, was this happening with the New York Times? Well, this guy, Ian Miles Chong, posted screenshots on X showing the New York Times being paid millions by the US government. And I think this was one that Elon Musk shared as well. And the post of this guy said the US government gave the New York Times tens of millions of dollars over just the past 5 years, despite paying relatively little money to the New York Times in the years preceding 2021. For instance, in August 2024, the US government awarded 4.1 million to the New York Times. The bulk of the funds came from the US Department of Health and Human Services at $26.9 million dollars, followed by the National Science Foundation at $19.15 million dollars. Okay, so again, starting in 2021, they're
Mhm.
getting all this funding, like that they've never gotten before, like large amounts, and it's coming from Health and Human Services and the National Science Foundation. That couldn't have anything to do with pushing the COVID panic, right?
Not at all.
My God. Looking at this, I'm like, this has to be the end for mainstream media because how in the hell can anyone tune in knowing that they were just paid propaganda machines? You
Well,
know?
I think it is going to be the end of mainstream media in the White House because yesterday Trump ordered the federal government to end all paid news subscriptions for employees and any agency offices across the executive branch of the White House. And there was an email that was sent to General Services Administration and it read, quote, put all contracts for Politico, BBC, E&E, which I guess is a sub of Politico, and Bloomberg. Pull all media contracts for just GSA. Cancel every single media contract today.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I love, again, Caroline Levitt, how she's like talking about this in the press room and she's like, Politico, they have a seat in here, don't they? And like calling him out. And it's just unfreaking real. And then the other thing, I didn't even make notes on this because it's like we have so much to talk about. But did you hear about all the celebrities that were getting paid millions of dollars by USAID just for a photo op with Zelensky to show like support for Ukraine? It was a whole
No.
bunch of them, like Sean Penn, Angelina Jolie, Chelsea Clinton got like tens of millions of dollars for no apparent reason, I guess just for being Chelsea Clinton. It's so freaking scandalous.
Yeah, but it's not remotely surprising, is it?
I
Like,
know, that's the thing. Nothing shocks me anymore.
right, it's so fucking shady. And since you brought up Zelensky, totally random, but you reminded me Rubio announced yesterday that he's not going to go to the G20 summit. It's going to be in Johannesburg, South Africa later this month. And his reason for not going is he says that their support of DEI and climate change policies are, quote, very bad things. But this is actually a really big deal for the Secretary of State of the United States not to attend the G20, which I think is awesome. And I'm wondering how this is going to impact Ukraine because the war has been a topic of the G7 and the G20 summit for the past few years.
I think it's a total power move.
Mhm.
It's showing like we're not going to put up with your bullshit. And if you want us to join in on whatever you have planned, cut the shit. Like we're going to set the agenda. Like I feel like that is what he's conveying. And it's amazing. And I'm going to be watching because I bet that we're going to see the G20 make some type of announcement very quickly about how they're ending, all the DEI stuff now that Rubio came out and made that statement.
Right, exactly. And speaking of DEI, did you see the spending related to transgender animal experiments?
Okay, that sounds like something out of a creepy sci-fi movie. No, I didn't
Well,
see that.
okay, well, this came out of a House Oversight Committee hearing yesterday. And there's a group called the White Coat Waste Project, and they just exposed at least $240 million in animal testing that's been conducted by the National Institute of Health. But what is it for? It's for transgender animal experiments, including $10 million alone last year. And there's currently 26 million in active projects going on. So apparently, like, they're using mice and rats and monkeys. They're surgically mutilating them, injecting them with gender affirming hormone therapies to see how they respond to gender transition drugs. But these experiments are fucked. And in one of them, they spent over 1.1 million to forcibly inject animals with an LGBTQ party drug. They didn't identify the drug. But the whole purpose was to see if the animals who had undergone testosterone treatments were more likely to overdose or not. And like Nancy Mace is all over this shit right now because of this hearing yesterday. But I mean, this is some insane shit.
It's literally making me feel sick just hearing it because here, they've been experimenting on our children.
Hmm?
Again, just like COVID saying, oh, there's no side effects. This is 100% safe. When the reality is they know damn well it wasn't safe and they're doing safety studies on it while they're giving it to real live human children. I
Right.
mean, it's so horrific. And I think I agree with Trump when he said this is going to be a stain on our nation. Like, we're going to
Yeah.
look back at this and be like, that was fucked up. I know we already are, but like, I think that's how it's going to go down in history. And Nancy Mace, I fucking love her. In that
Mhm.
meeting, she was like, she said the word tranny, okay? And one of the Democrats was like, that is actually an offensive word. And I asked that she be disciplined or whatever. And she goes, for what? For saying tranny? She's like, tranny, tranny, tranny. She's like, I am not going to have some man tell me, a woman, that you can have a dude in women's spaces. And she just like went off on him. And James Comey's like the head of that committee. And he was like, yeah, I'm not really up to date on like the lingo. So we'll just have to look into that one. I fucking love her because she's not taking
Oh,
their shit.
yeah.
And, like it's like we're done worrying about offending every single person.
Yeah, and Trump's not taking the shit either because I didn't make notes on this, but I think it was just yesterday or the day before that he signed that ban with transgender sports.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is huge for women's rights. All
Hmm.
I heard about is like, oh, he's against women's rights. No, this is helping women have a safe locker room and bathroom and be able to compete in sports and not get all of their scholarships and trophies taken away by boys. You
Yeah,
know?
let me correct myself. Not banning transgender sports, banning transgenders in women's sports.
Yeah. Well, I got what you meant.
Yeah, I figured.
Okay, so I'm going to completely shift gears, because I came across just some major, major news with Los Angeles and the fires. And can I just say, we were definitely on top of it. We were onto it when we were talking about LA becoming a smart city. And, there's a lot of people saying, like, oh, that's just a conspiracy. No, 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 no. Every conspiracy, just give it enough time and the facts will come out. So, this is exactly what's happening. So, this is getting press now, this particular thing called the new Citywide Housing Incentive Program, also known as CHIP. And basically, now that people in the Palisades are looking into like rebuilding their homes, they're coming across this new ordinance. And the ordinance has dozens of new zoning agreements. And it says that at least 20% of new apartment units have to be designated as affordable housing. So, anyhow, in this area that was burnt, like the Palisades and some of the other areas, most of the renters there are going to exceed the income threshold for affordable housing. So they won't qualify for those new units. So I thought that was interesting. And, I just started looking into it a little bit more. And oh my God, it is crazy. This is just the tip of the iceberg of what is in place. So you could go on the Los Angeles City Planning website and just look around, spend 10 minutes, your mind will be blown. So first I come across what's called the 2021 to 2029 housing element. And it says, quote, known as the Plan to House LA, identified significant housing needs throughout Los Angeles reflected by high rents, overcrowded conditions, and housing instability. The housing element rezoning program called for the housing element sets out to address these critical housing needs and meet the city's housing obligations under state law through the adoption of three proposed ordinances. So there's that CHIP ordinance, then there's the housing element sites and minimum density ordinance, and resident protections ordinance. God, that's a mouthful. The proposed ordinances will be effective citywide. Okay, so these ordinances were drafted in March of 2024 to provide quote unquote equitable housing. And when you start digging into the documents that are on this website, there's all kinds of DEI jargon that's basically going to screw the homeowners in LA that lost their homes. So remember how I said this CHIP Act says that, or CHIP ordinance says 20% of the new units have to be affordable. Well, I found something interesting in the fine print that says, quote, the Affordable Housing Incentive Program will provide tailored land use incentives for 100% affordable housing projects and affordable housing projects constructed by faith-based organizations in moderate, high, and highest resource areas as defined by TCAC and the city. Additionally, the ordinance will expand the types of zones eligible for 100% affordable housing projects to parking zones and public facility zones. So basically, 20% of the units must be affordable. However, the city is giving huge incentives and preferential treatment. They're like fast tracking permits for anyone that's building 100% affordable projects. So theoretically, you could get someone coming in and saying, hey, I want to use this land to build a 15-minute city, and it's going to be all affordable units. They would get preferential treatment, and their whole project would be fast tracked. And there's all sorts of incentives tied to it. So like that's what I'm thinking when Newsom was saying, "Oh, we're going to build it back better than before." I think that's what he means. I think they're literally putting in this smart city, but like you were saying, Tara, the 15-minute city. I really think that is in the plans here. And so anyhow, it's called a letter of determination document. It's 50 pages. I haven't got through all of it because by the time I got to page 6, all of a sudden the website shut down. It stopped working. And I don't even remember what it said, but it was like website shutdown or like something like that. Like they just cut it off. And I'm like, did I just access something I wasn't supposed to access? I don't think so. Like, and it wouldn't let me open it back up. I tried all night. And again, this was filled with all kinds of DEI jargon. And I'm just going to read a couple of the policies. It was policy 1.1.7, and it said, quote, incentivize production of mixed income and 100% affordable housing projects by rezoning for more inclusive developments at densities that enable their construction in every geographical location. Every geographical location. So that would cover all of LA, every location where the fires happened. They're going to give preferential priority treatment to affordable housing projects that are quote unquote inclusive. And almost all the areas that were devastated by the fires were not considered affordable. These were like middle, upper class neighborhoods. And so my question is, how many homes are going to be approved to rebuild? And if they are approved, how much red tape are they going to have to go through before they can even begin the building process? Like I think they have an uphill battle. And then, were you going to say something?
No, no. Mm-mm.
I'm just going to read. There's like so much I could say about this, but a couple of the other policies, because it just flat out says what they're doing. So, policy 1.3.1 says it'll prioritize housing capacity, resources, policies, and incentives to affordable housing development in residential communities. So, once again, in the communities that were just burnt to the ground. Policy 1.3.2 says, quote, prioritize the development of new affordable housing in all communities, particularly those that have fewer affordable units. So essentially what they're saying is places like the Palisades, where there wasn't probably any affordable housing, they are going to give priority to people building affordable units. So if they have thousands of permit applications, who do you think they're going to approve first?
This just has me so confused because they're basically driving. Are they driving the elites out of Los Angeles? Like,
No. Okay, here's my take on it. The elites, the super wealthy, they'll be fine because they can hire their lawyers and they can hire people to deal with all this red tape for them. They could pay off politicians. It's the middle class families that are going to be screwed because by the time they get through all these permitting obligations, what are they going to do? Where are they going to live? If they have
but
to wait 2 years to even get a permit,
I get that. But affordable housing, not trying to be a dick, but affordable housing usually turns into a shithole.
yeah.
Like, affordable housing does not make for a nice community, right? So you have all these wealthy people in the Pacific Palisades, and now they're going to build affordable housing units there or smart cities there. Like, there's no fucking way the two are going to live together.
Right. And I think that's what Mel Gibson was saying. Remember when he was like on Fox News and he was like, it's almost like they're trying to make people leave California.
Mhm.
I don't know. Is that their plan? I mean, why would you do something so stupid? But then again, like, look at how much damage was caused in the Biden administration. I don't think they think that far ahead. It's just like, oh, inclusion, equity.
I just feel like Newsom needs these people. Like, he needs to have all these rich elites on his side to make his fucking state function.
Well, here's the thing that just came to mind. Yes, affordable housing usually ends up being like the projects, right? Well, affordable housing could also mean a 15-minute city where
Yeah,
you have complete control over the people. I mean, we're talking
true.
a surveillance state. They're not allowed to have cars.
Mhm.
They don't go. I think that's the thing is like power and control. And if you want to stay in this area, you're gonna submit to that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, I guess we'll see what happens when they start building these units and how it goes.
Yeah.
That's nuts. But since you brought up the fires, I have to mention this story because, there's still thousands of displaced people. And the Red Cross has been housing a bunch of these wildfire victims at the Pasadena Convention Center. Something like 300 people are there. And I guess they're being kicked out because it's time for them to host events. So I guess they do like some singing competition, and then they have the NAACP Image Awards coming up, and they have all this stuff on their calendar. So they're just kicking them out of the convention center.
So where are they supposed to go?
No
I
idea.
hear Newsom has a lot of land. Maybe he can take
Right.
them in. I
Yeah,
mean, oh my God. Now, could you imagine if this was Florida and DeSantis was kicking people out? Like, it would be on every news channel that he's
right.
racist or something. Like, they'd make it into some crazy ass story.
I mean, Pasadena is not, it's its own city, so it's not technically part of Los Angeles, but it does still fall under Governor Newsom. So
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah.
But I do want to get back to Trump for a minute because you know how you brought up on Wednesday the very interesting comments he made about the Gaza Strip?
Yeah.
So he is like doubling down on this idea. Did you see his Truth Social post about it yesterday?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I want to read what he said. He said, quote, "The Gaza Strip would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of fighting. The Palestinians, people like Chuck Schumer, would have already been resettled in far safer and more beautiful communities with new and modern homes in the region. They would actually have a chance to be happy, safe, and free. The U.S., working with great development teams from all over the world, would slowly and carefully begin the construction of what would become one of the greatest and most spectacular developments of its kind on Earth. No soldiers by the U.S. would be needed. Stability for the region would reign," with a ton of exclamation marks.
Palestinians like Chuck Schumer. He is
Yes.
like the best freaking troll. Oh my God. Well, after we did that episode, I started getting in my head and second guessing myself. Like, should I really have said all that about him, maybe trying to like pull one over on Netanyahu? But then I went back and looked, and people were commenting on this too on social media. When you look at Netanyahu's face as Trump is talking about his plans, it looks like the look you would give when it's the first time you're hearing some pretty shocking news. Like he never heard this before. That was the look he was giving Trump. So it makes me think, yeah, like I do think Trump was kind of like, screw you, we're doing it my way. And I think that's a better scenario than the alternative.
Well, that's the thing. It's like nobody has presented a better idea. And I guess it kind of caught like Rubio off guard, and it caught I keep wanting to call her Katie now, the press secretary,
Caroline,
Carolyn. It caught her off guard too. And so they were kind of trying to walk back his statement a little bit. And that's when he posted this on Truth Social. So he's just like, nope, this is the idea we're going with.
we're doing it my way, fuckers.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And that's a thing. It's like every day I'm just like, what's going to come out today? Because
I know.
there is so much. It's so freaking crazy. But we have to end on this funny note, okay? Because like the best trend ever is happening on TikTok right now. And so people are saying that they worked for USAID and what their position was. And so here's some of my favorites, okay? I wa I worked in the window raindrop race department. I was the referee. And then someone posts, yeah, my husband lost his job too. His job was determining if the wheels on the bus do in fact go round and round. And then I worked for USAID. I built miniature amusement parks for caterpillars. I got fired. This is, oh my God. I got fired from USAID. I work from home as a firefighter.
Oh my God.
I was the assistant manager of the Finding a Needle in the Haystack department. I was in the Shrimps on a Treadmill division. And my favorite, I just got fired from USAID. I didn't even know I worked there. Just because
Oh, that's
all the
classic.
ridiculous spending. I'm like, okay, we got to laugh about it because it's so outrageous.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So we'll have
I'm
probably a whole other list by tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sure over the weekend, since DOGE employees don't seem to take the weekend off, I'm sure a bunch more insane government spending is gonna come up. And I just love that it's all being exposed.
Yeah, I do too. It's like complete transparency. And,
Mhm.
all these people on the left that are flipping out about it are showing their hand. Like, clearly, you're the one that's corrupt because you're
Yeah.
mad that they're finding government waste and fraud. Why would you be mad at that unless you were benefiting from it?
Yep.
So, yeah, a lot's going to come up. I want to start seeing arrests. I am ready for them to start arresting people. So if that happens, I mean, we're going to talk about it. So we'll keep everyone up to date on the latest. And I hope you have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you back here on Monday.